Do you ever watch a game and think, how is this player so bad at defense? He's an NBA level athlete, he's physically strong, he's skilled on offense, and yet he keeps getting beat. And it's not necessarily because he doesn't care, it's because even NBA players make these defensive mistakes. And there are 5 defensive mistakes I see most often from youth all the way to the NBA. Mechanical issues that when you fix, defense immediately starts to look different. So let's start with number 1, and that has to do with your defensive stance. Stand up for a second, spread your feet way wider than shoulder width, like this picture of Luka, and try to move laterally. Now let's try again, but this time with your feet back under your hips, about shoulder distance apart, and try again. Notice how much easier it is to push off and reload. I mean, you can see in the example of me, look how much more ground I cover with a narrow stance versus a wide one. And honestly, I was trying, but when your stance is too wide, although it might look good, it actually makes it harder to move. Your muscles are already at the end of their range, which means you lose most of your explosive force. So instead of pushing explosively into space, it's like you're trying to snap a rubber band that's already stretched too far. There's no pop left. And that's what leads to those blow-bys, not because the defender is lazy, but because the stance can't produce any lateral force. And when you watch a player like Luka and you slow the film down, that's often the first thing that jumps out to me. Before the drive ever happens, his stance is often already too wide to load cleanly. So when the offensive player attacks, he's reacting from a position that can't give him anything back. Now, the perfect stance width is going to vary from player to player. Some players feel better a little wider, others a little more narrow. Studies have shown that 1 to 1.5 times your shoulder width is the ideal though. But rather than measuring inches, the easiest thing is to go test it yourself. If your first push off seems slow, heavy, or delayed, the stance is probably too wide. A good stance lets you push off immediately without having to gather yourself first. Now, don't get me wrong, there are moments when a wide stance helps. If you're absorbing contact or bracing for a bump, widening out can add stability and leverage. But the defense we're looking at on the perimeter is rarely static. And if you stay wide when you need to move fast, well, that stability turns into a liability. If we go back to a player like Luka, to me that wide stance feels like he's preparing to initiate contact on defense instead of moving to contain first. And that should be the priority of our defensive stance. I need you to think wide to absorb, but narrow to explode. And once your stance is corrected, the next thing we need to look at are your knees. Let's go back to that defensive stance and look at where your knees are sitting relative to your feet. Are your joints stacked or are your knees caving in? If the knee is collapsing inward, you're starting from a compromised position. In fact, that collapsed knee position actually limited my force more than a wide stance did. Because when the knees are caved inward, force leaks immediately. The body either has to realign first or accept a weaker push-off. It's like trying to push a shopping cart when one wheel is turned inward. You're pushing, but some of that force is leaking in the completely wrong way. That's why the first step of some defenders feels so slow, even though they're reacting on time. The movement wasn't delayed and the reaction wasn't delayed, it was just severely diluted. This is something you see a lot when you watch a player like Josh Giddey. Before the drive even starts, you can see his knees are already drifting inwards in his defensive stance. So when the offensive player attacks, he's pushing from a position that can't generate lateral force cleanly. Now, let me be clear, some knee movement is normal. The knee doesn't have to be perfectly still, but the issue is when it collapses under load or starting from a collapsed position. Just like your grip and elbow position on a bench press, alignment at the start determines almost everything that follows. If the setup is off, the rep never really had a good chance. And even if your knee is stacked correctly, there's still one more place that could be leaking your force, and to see that, we need to go to the foot level. Now let's go back into a defensive stance for one last time. This time the width is right, the knees are stacked, And as we get ready to move, right, prepare yourself like you're going to slide in any direction and notice where your weight shifts. It should be loaded to the balls of your feet. But if most of your weight is sitting back on your heels, well, you're limiting your force. Go ahead, try it yourself. Shift your weight to your heels and try to move explosively. It feels awkward and slow. That's because when the heel takes over, the ankle stops acting like a spring. You get longer contact time with the floor, your body has to rock forward before it can move laterally, and in sports science, this shows up consistently. Studies looking at cutting and stopping mechanics show that forefoot loaded athletes get off the ground faster than heel loaded ones, even when producing the same force. You can imagine loading your heels and trying to move on defense like a sprinter standing straight up instead of starting in the sprinter blocks. You have the same amount of force, it just takes longer to get to it. Now, this doesn't mean your heels never touch the floor. When you're braking hard or absorbing contact, heel contact is normal, but it needs to be brief. The issue is living with heel contact. Watch the best defenders closely, their heels hardly touch the ground. Even when they stop or move backwards, they stay on their forefoot so they can re-accelerate at any moment. But when the weight shifts back on the heels, well, defense becomes off balance and you lose all your explosiveness. One test we use in the Lockdown Academy is the Beverly Slide with a resistance band anchored behind you. That setup forces forefoot engagement because if you drift to your heels, well, the band will automatically pull you off balance immediately. This is a self-correcting drill, all for foot imbalances. If you want to see all those drills inside the Academy, check out the link below. But we still have 2 mistakes to get to, and this next one occurs higher up on the chain and it happens in the hips. Because when defenders open their hips too early, well, they give up angles and now you're just along for the ride. But if you stay square and slide first, well, this keeps you in legal guarding position and gives yourself a chance to stop the drive with your chest. Perhaps even more importantly, it also lets you change directions to counter attacks without looking like you're on skates. Meanwhile, when you open your hips, you automatically go into recovery mode, which is necessary at times like in the full court, but open your hips too early in the half court and you're just chasing the play. Your first movement from your stance shouldn't be to drop your hips and turn and run, it should be to defensive slide. But even if we keep those hips square, there's still one more mistake that shows up in how defenders cover ground. A lot of defenders move in straight lines. They slide directly side to side, which kind of makes sense. That's what every defensive drill your coach has ever told you has required you to do. But against good offensive players, that almost never works. The offense is moving north and south, and you're trying to only move east to west. The only chance you have is to cleanly beat someone to a spot, because if you don't, that's going to be a foul or they're going to open you up. Instead, we should think of defense like a geometric battle of angles. This is where the cushion slide matters, retreating at angles to line up the attack with your chest, giving you chances to cut off the drive and take charges. You're now managing space and controlling angles, and this doesn't mean you're backing up endlessly or giving up easy shots. It means you're positioning yourself between them and the basket and using your body to maintain legal guarding position. So there you have it, the 5 most common mistakes you'll see on defense, and these are the exact things I look for when I break down players' film. Their stance, their alignment, their foot loading, their hip turning, their angles, and so much more. Because most defensive breakdowns are solvable with the right training and habits. While most people see these blow-bys and think lazy defense or players who don't care, there might be much more to the story. So if you're a coach or player and you want a second set of eyes on your defense, I'm currently taking on a handful of virtual clients to break down their film, clean up these exact mechanical issues, and build a defensive bag that actually gets you stops. If you're interested, there's an application link in the description below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what you struggle with the most on defense, because we might feature it in an upcoming video. As always, I'm Coach Mike with Lockdown Defense. Keep up the hard work.